So today I'm facing a little bit of an unusual challenge for a maker. I will be making something out of nothing. Because of lockdown measures, etc., I am exiled from my usual workshop in Glasgow, and unfortunately my materials are safely locked in my workshop in Glasgow. So I am back at my little home studio, and it only has the bare essentials. I had a couple of jobs that I had taken over from last year to the new year, so I literally just had the bare essentials to finish those jobs, and that's basically it. But I've had a little request from my mother, actually, and she's asked me to make a little something for a friend of hers. So I am going to have to do something using whatever scraps and bits of material I have here in my workshop. And honestly, I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what I've actually got in terms of scrap and in terms of raw material and stones and so on. So I'm just going to have to make the best of this and just see what I can do. So first things first, let me actually have a look at what I've got and what I've got to work with and try and figure something out from there. So this is my little toolbox, and this is literally all I've brought back with me. This and my little polishes. But that is literally all I've got. These are all my tools. So in there I've got my solder, in there I've got some rubber mops and polishing mops and texturing mops and cutting saws and everything that I use on my pendant motor. So after this, let's have a look in here. I think I can start seeing some materials. So I've got a few little round amethysts of varying sizes, so that's good. I've got some solder. Okay, right, well I've got some scrap bits of silver that I'd used for some other things. Oh yes, this was a piece of silver that I had textured with a leaf, so that's already got quite a nice texture on it, so I might be able to make something with that actually. Got a little bit of wire, so that is always very useful. Here I've also got some little rubies and some clear 3mm CZs. So again, I've got a little bit to work with, and let me just see if I've got any tubing anywhere. Oh, I've got a little bit of tubing right there, so if I've got any stones that could work with, I think I might have an idea, or even, well, I've got more than one idea, but I'm going to have to settle on one idea for something to make for my mum's friend. A pendant that uses part of this textured silver and maybe do a little stone setting right at the top with maybe a smaller stone. So I'm going to actually do my measurements a bit and come up with a design and cutout for a pendant that uses this in some form or other. So I've actually managed to find a lovely ruby which I think will sit in there really nicely. The size seems to be just about right, and I think it's going to complement the silver really nicely. So now I need to actually move on to the piece of silver and decide on a shape, and I'm actually thinking of doing a nice oval shape. The first thing that I always need to do when I come to my workshop, especially if I've been measuring and need to have kind of an overview over my things, is to actually lower my seat to the right height. And down I go. Hello. So now I can actually get started with cutting out my oval shape on this disc. Right, so I'm quite happy with that. Trying to get it into focus. But I'm quite happy with that. It's a nice oval shape. If I need to do any more refining, I can do it at a later date. So as I am considering what to do in terms of positioning, I am thinking that maybe something off center might actually look quite nice. However, if I do it right in the center, right at the top, it's maybe a little bit more traditional. Another option I have is to do it at the bottom to one side and have the chain going at the top. And I think of the 3 options that I've told you, because there are about 1,000 more, I think I'm actually going to go with this option here of having it at the bottom to one side. And it's still traditional enough, and one of the reasons why I keep saying traditional is because I know the person that I'm making the necklace for, and her tastes are perhaps a little bit more traditional than contemporary. So I still want something that can be appreciated by someone who likes something a little bit more traditional, but has still got something a little bit different about it. So by just positioning it on the lower right hand corner instead of just at the middle top or at the middle bottom, it's actually working with that organic flow of it. Especially I'm looking at that V that is coming down from the leaf, and there's just a little bit, if I move the stone you'll see it a bit better, but there's a little bit of plainness where you don't have any striations of any of the veining of the leaf. So I kind of want to cover that with the stone, because it's almost like the leaf is telling me where the stone should go. So that, I think, is what I am going to go with. So I've got the hole in the actual piece of silver, and I've now slotted in the little stone setting so that it still gets a nice bit of light shining through it from the back and allows the colour of the stone to really pop. Because if I left that silver backing, that stone would look a lot duller, because it wouldn't actually have the light shining through it from the back that is really what brings a colour to life, especially with a transparent stone like a ruby and most faceted stones that really require that light coming from the back. So I've put the hole in the actual piece, I've slotted this in. Now all that is left is for me to actually solder it on. So while I'm waiting for my main piece to clean in the pickle tank, I can now work on the 2 hoops to go on top of the pendant for the chain to go through. Now for this I've only got 2 small bits of wire, and it's just normal round wire. So I'm going to have to do my best with what I've got. So this is actually more or less a perfect size for what I need, so I will just be bending these back. However, I always think that for the hoops on top of a pendant, it looks really nice when they're not just round wire, but if they've actually been squared slightly or made a little bit flat anyway on top. So that's what I'm just going to go and do now. I'm actually going to get my hammer and just flatten them out a little bit to give it just that nice crisp finish. Now, as you can see, these are now 2 nicely flattened pieces of silver. Now I can actually bend them into shape and make them look circular. So this is now the top part of the pendant with the 2 hoops for the chain to go through. And yes, it's still very rough, and you can just see the solder join there, and it's still very dirty. You can now clean this, solder it onto the top half, and then really clean everything up together. In the meantime, while I've been doing this little bit, this has been nicely cleaning in the pickle, It's still got a little bit of fire stain there, but that's okay for now because I still need to solder it and clean it even more. But that is now going to be soldered onto this. So I'm now going to go ahead and file that and clean it up and solder it onto this sheet, and then I can clean everything together. So I've now cleaned the piece, which is basically finished, and I've got all the solder done and everything is pretty much ready to go. However, it's still in a bit of a rough form, so I still need to file it and clean it all up, and then I can actually polish it before I set the stone. So now that this piece is polished and filed and all ready to go, as you can see, I've given it a nice high polish at the back and left it between high polish and matte at the front so that you can actually see the striations of the petal that I used for the imprint, and it's actually come out really nicely. And again, I've done a nice high polish on the top, and all that's left for me to do is to actually set the stone. Well, I don't know about you, but I think I would call that quite a successful little experiment. I managed to make a pendant out of basically nothing, and I'm actually really happy with the result, and I think it's something that is very sweet, very classic, and I really hope that both my mother and her friend will be pleased with the result. So thank you for joining me in my little adventure today of making jewellery out of nothing. So what do you think? Would you be mad enough to commission me to make you something out of nothing? Well, if you are and you would like me to make you something out of scraps and recycled silver and stones that I have lying around, then please feel free to contact me directly through my social media at Lorna Design or through my website at lornaromanenghi.com, and I am here and up for any challenge you have to throw at me. If you, however, have a more serious commission in mind, then feel free as well to contact me at any time. I can actually order in materials, so don't worry about that. I am here still working away as usual. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, then don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notifications button, which will keep you up to date to any new videos coming out. So thanks again for joining me today, and see you next week.